2. Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. If you're out on social media this week, Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, you'll see that I am not in Buffalo this week, although Luke is on the backfields and has you covered on the text service and all the other stuff that we do around here, including the morning newspaper and Baltimore Positive. But the Ravens are in Buffalo, and I'm going to be in Asia. And this guy is a rock and roll heart of a guy with the replacements. He's been doing the Buffalo sports thing a long time at the AP. He has been a frequent visitor here because it feels like we play the Bills either in the preseason or the regular season a lot. We don't play the Sabres enough. I know he's an expert on all things Sabres as well. We welcome John Wawrow back in, AP sports writer up in the Niagara area where I'm missing out on all that fun up there with my friends at Cheektowaga, Depew, and Amherst. John, great to have you back on, and certainly, look, man, when the schedule comes out in April, you look at it and you say, how big of a matchup could a Baltimore at Buffalo game be the first week of December? I don't know that this one could be any hotter on both sides, and I know your community's as excited about your football team as ours is about us, right?
Right, and thanks for having me on, Nestor. I was just thinking that this morning that, I still think Baltimore is a better team right now, but if the Bills are trending higher, trending upward, and if they happen to, beat Baltimore, imagine, what that AFC playoff race is going to look like this, after this weekend, especially with New England faltering. But I don't think anybody expected this game to have this much implication, back in April. Never mind, back maybe a month ago, even when the Bills were struggling, and there were questions about, whether they can find their rhythm. But now I think all eyes are going to be on Orchard Park in this game, given the implications of what's going on and the fact that you're seeing two 2018 first-round quarterbacks taken, and probably right now maybe the best two of that five-player class, Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen.
Well, Lamar's had these comparisons every week, right? Like last 2 weeks ago was Deshaun Watson. Then, then it was Russell Wilson before. Oh, Tom Brady, can't beat him. And before it's all over with, he's probably going to see Mahomes again or a Brady again, or maybe your outfit will be the first ones that come in here after winning a first-round game. Who knows, right? But I do know this. I look at the Bills, and the first thing I say, and I watched them play on Thanksgiving, and certainly they're trending up. They've won 3 games in a row twice this year. That's a very difficult thing to do. But look at this here. Ravens at home, who turn out to be the best team in football right now. Then they go to Pittsburgh. Then they go to New England. They're going to be able to sort of butter their own bread if they're a 9-3 football team, or if they're a 9-6 football team, right? Like wherever they're going to be in 3 weeks, you're going to figure out how you feel about them. You watch them play a whole lot more, and I watch them beat up, relatively pedestrian Dallas team. I mean, I look at some of the other victories here, Denver, Miami. These are not impressive wins, and certainly the losses to the Browns and the Eagles probably felt differently about those 6 weeks ago than you feel at this point. I'm not down on the Bills at all. I'm interested in seeing what this looks like, but for your community, 9-3, much like 10-2 and being the number 1 seed, this is a pretty heady season for two towns that love football. This is going to be a great football game on Sunday.
Well, yeah, I hope it turns out that way. And there are a lot of questions 2 months into the season, whether as to who the Bills were, because they can't apologize for the schedule, but the schedule is very weak. I mean, at one point, they beat Cincinnati, they beat the Jets, they beat the Giants, they beat a whole bunch of pushovers, and then they lost to Cleveland at a time when I think at a time the team was struggling. So there were a lot of question marks in regards to the Bills as to who they actually were. And it was after the Cleveland game 4 weeks ago that Sean McDermott informed the team or urged the team to play fearless. He thought the team was playing a little bit too tentatively. And it's since that point where they've been putting up better numbers. They've been playing far more efficiently. And they've introduced this no-huddle attacks, not really up-tempo, but it's more just simply they're not huddling. And it seems to have worked on offense, and the defense is has upped its blitzing, which is something they were wary of doing earlier. I'm not sure if they will do that against Lamar Jackson, because like his dynamic running nature, but it's become a more aggressive defense as well. So they've been after coming. After having difficulty beating some of these pushovers, they had to rally from behind to beat Cincinnati in the fourth quarter. They've been putting up style points when it comes to wins, and I think it's been encouraging to see them do that, especially the way they beat Dallas on Thursday evening. I think that really put them out on that national stage. It was a coming out party in some ways.
Well, so many of these names are familiar, right? I mean, Sean McDermott back to Eagle roots and all of that
Right.
stuff. There's some Super Bowl pedigree in here. Obviously, Frank Gore and sort of a Hall of Fame, the way we're talking about him at this point. And Jerry Hughes and guys that you're familiar with. Certainly Stephen Hauschka, very familiar to every Ravens fan from the beginning, and what we've seen Justin Tucker become around here, and how important kicking is, as we found that on Sunday to win another football game around here. This isn't your father's Bills team that's always trying to strive to be 8-8 in any given year. I think there's a different level of expectation, and at some point after 20 years of waiting around for Tom Brady to be 42, Tom Brady's actually 42 now, right? I mean, at some point, the Bills are going to step up, as are the Jets and the Dolphins, because the Patriots aren't going to be the Patriots anymore.
Well, that is true, and to the Bills' credit, they have been, ever since Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane arrived here in 2017 after really Rex Ryan and Doug Whaley, the GM back then, were essentially just kicked out of town after 2 inept seasons under Rex. They've been very careful and patient in rebuilding this team. There's 4 players left from the team that made the playoffs in 2017. So they have completely torn down this roster and rebuilt it in their own image. They've done it through through draft picks and Josh Allen and Tremaine Edmonds, who were both first rounders in 2018. Ed Oliver is coming on. He was a first round pick this past April. And they've also peppered in a number of veterans to fill in the blanks and also fill leadership roles. And the biggest additions this offseason happen to be their two smallest guys, in Cole Beasley, and John Brown, who Ravens fans will be familiar with. Both have been exceptional in the passing attack. Not as deep threats so much, but more in a slot type of role, and they've both found their niches in this passing attack that Josh Allen is now overseeing.
We have John Wawrow on the line from the Associated Press up in Buffalo. He's a historian of all sorts of things, back to the rock pile and OJ and Jim Kelly and good seasons. And, I've got a history in Buffalo. I went up for Oilers games back in the 80s when Frank Reich was leading the comebacks and the K-Gun and Marcia Broda. And I was up there when they beat the snot out of the Raiders in the championship game. And one of my dear friends is a former cartoonist for the Buffalo Courier Express many moons ago, and Mike Rosigliano. So I got a lot of roots up there in history, and I always think of the experience of being out in Orchard Park, how cold it is, the fires, the food, the drinks, the beer, the RVs, all of that sort of nature, and all of the years of sort of relative ineptitude after Kelly, right? Like,
sure.
We've had such a nice ride here. I mean, we're now the best team in football, and our fans are we've had a 3.0 reboot here. We had the Billick, we had the Harbaugh, Flacco, and now we're in the Lamar era. You guys are sort of waiting for that next era, right? Like, ours have been sort of these seamless transitions that on the baseball side, as you well know, have not happened here over a quarter of a century. Right. And I know the Sabres have struggled and, at various points have been the worst team in the sport. And the Bills have, at various points been a laughingstock. Are we going to get a stadium? Is Bon Jovi going to move the team to Toronto? Do these rich people that own the team know what they're doing? There's been all of that, and I would think the Ravens are going to find a Buffalo this week that's as good as it gets. It's going to be cold. The team's winning. They're winning a lot. The best player on earth's coming in. The best team on earth's coming in. I would see this as being a little bit reminiscent of what I found with Jim Kelly 25 years ago from what the Ravens are going to find at kickoff Sunday.
Right. I mean, this is the the '90s version of Dolphins, Bills, Marino versus Kelly, and that's what this But these are two new style quarterbacks who have this running element to their game, and yeah, it's been a while because this franchise went through a 17-year playoff drought and kind of they backed into the playoffs because of Cincinnati beating Baltimore on the Tyler Boyd touchdown catch in the final moment, from Andy Dalton. So
you're welcome.
Yeah. Hey, people,
say that again, though, John. I want you to.
How often do they? I know. How often do they bring up wide right on the national broadcast? So,
of course. How many years have you been covering sports in Buffalo, John?
Well, this is my 20th year.
20th year, and there were 17 in a row where the team was not worthy of playing a playoff game. 17 years in a row.
It was the longest playoff drought in North America's active playoff drought in North America's four major professional sports. So, I covered a lot of misery here.
Yeah. I mean, I guess as fans in Baltimore, we don't look at it as like sort of Browns misery, where it was always sort of 2-14. It was sort of perennially sort of 6, 7, 8 win misery to some degree, right?
It was 7-9, 7-9. The Dick Duran years, before he was fired, he lasted 3+ seasons, and they were kind of the epitome of who the Bills were: 7-9, 7-9, 7-9. So yeah, and that was part of the problem too. I mean, Ralph Wilson, the Hall of Fame owner who passed in 2014, was getting stale and he was losing touch with the team. And then there was a revolving door of coaches and general managers, which really set the franchise back. And it's not until the Padulas realized that Rex Ryan and Doug Whaley were oil and water, and that neither of them were going to be a fit for the long term here, is when they arrived upon the Padulas are the ones who hired Sean McDermott, and he has really provided a steadying balance to this team with his vision, with his message. And then Brandon Beane came in 5 months later to replace Doug Whaley immediately right after the draft. And they both even though they both work in Carolina, they have a singular vision when it comes to building a team. And that's what was lacking for so many years when it came to the front office and the coach. There just was never a singular vision. There always seemed to be some separate agenda or distraction, or the people were just plainly inept. They were not fit for the job. And now those two, we're watching how they're the architects of this team, and they have constructed a team that they believe meets their long-term objective of building a sustainable winner, that this team will be a playoff contender for not just this year, but for years to come.
John Wawrow covers all things Buffalo sports, as well as the Sabres and Buff State and all this cool stuff going on in Western New York. You can follow him as well at WNST.net. We have the AP Stats package for all of our stuff and all of our box scores that you can find there. And on the backside of our own website, I see the depth chart here, John, and who's their best player? Like, I guess Josh Allen would be the quarterback and the guy we know, and there'll be comparisons all week for all of that. And obviously, Gore's the Hall of Fame guy. But like, what has made this engine work to this degree this year for this team to be sniffing around the Patriots, at least for the first time in a long time?
Yeah, it's if you want to really identify who their best player is, and probably a guy who deserves a lot of mention, it's quarterback Tre'Davious White, who happened to be the guy that the Bills passed up on Patrick Mahomes in 2017 to trade back with Kansas City, and Kansas City picked Mahomes and the Bills picked Tre'Davious White. And those comparisons are always going to be there, and that memory is always going to be there. But so long as Josh Allen continues improving on this upward trajectory, I think that's going to mute the thoughts about missing out on Patrick Mahomes. But Tre'Davious White has developed himself as a lockdown corner. He shut down Odell Beckham. He has shut down some of the top receivers around the league. especially this year. And I think he's their best player, and he's what makes their defensive backfield run. It allows them to go man-to-man because they have two veteran safeties in Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. And it allows them to play man-to-man and to pressure the quarterback more, which is what has become more effective as the season has come on. But you can't discount what Josh Allen continues to do. He's trending upwards. He's becoming the leader of this team. This team does follow him.
Well, he's a fascinating guy, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
the day he gets drafted. Tell me about Josh Allen, because we're going to hear comparisons all week long, and I've done a little bit of research on him. We were not necessarily in the market for any of those lottery pick quarterbacks, and how this whole thing has worked out. Hey, John, you're a reporter. You've been doing this a couple decades. I've now followed Lamar from Seattle back home to L.A. The reporters are following around trying to get the story of this kid from Pompano Beach, right? Like, Josh Allen went to Wyoming, for crying out loud, and no one wanted him, right? Like, he's the exact opposite of any of these Alabama kids, right?
That's exactly it. Allen couldn't make Fresno's roster. They would not, and he grew up in their backyard in a small, I believe an avocado growing town in Central California called Fireball, which I just realized listening to music was mentioned in the Springsteen song. So I can't remember the song, but it was. But it's no one has heard of Fireball, California. It's in Central, California. His boyhood dream was to play for Fresno. Fresno wouldn't allow.
The song is called "The New Timer," by the way, but I'm a Springsteen guy. But go ahead.
Thank you.
Depression song. I like it. It's it picks me up. Goes to Tom Joad. There you go.
Exactly. And it wasn't until he went to this. He had success at this community college in Central California, where Wyoming and a MAC school were the two schools that Mid-American Conference school offered him a scholarship, and he chose Wyoming. And there were still questions about him coming out of the draft. He had accuracy. He had accuracy issues. The important thing was, though, and the one thing that's interesting, he never was a running style quarterback at Wyoming. And so the Bills were surprised when he starts popping off these runs and hurdling linebackers at the NFL level. But he's been a raw project that the Bills have really massaged into a quarterback who really looks like he's going to have a long-term future. He's, of all the quarterbacks that have come through his Doug Flutie in the late 90s, Josh Allen appears to be the best of the bunch. And I'm saying that not in a backhanded way, but because he's got the potential to be the long-term answer to finally have somebody replace Jim Kelly as a long-term starter here in Buffalo.
You mentioned Jim Kelly. John Wawrow from the Associated Press is our guest. The legend of Jim Kelly, and look, man, I made the drive up Route 15. I had a girlfriend in Geneseo. I met a girl in 1988. To give you a little bit of a time frame, I was a huge Oiler fan, Warren Moon fan, and I went to several of those big games up there. The Art Shell blowout game of Jay Schrader in the first Super Bowl, and I actually at one point I have been pictured wearing Bills Zubaz pants when I met Warren Moon at the 1992 Super Bowl in Minneapolis when Thurman Thomas forgot his helmet, which I've had him on the program, and I've had Reed Kelly. I mean, obviously Mark Jabrota became a part of my life, at the end of his life as well. Mm-hmm. The legacy of the Bills 30 years later and that ball not going through once, twice, three times, Leon led, all the stuff that, the legacy of all that happened there. Obviously, Jim Kelly's life has been this, incredible roller coaster of high highs and low lows and tragedy and triumph. And for Allen, we're going to talk about Jim Kelly this week. You can't talk to people in Buffalo because that's, I guess in my lifetime, it's Buffalo's legacy to talk about what the football program has meant there and what it's taught people in Western New York about all sorts of things, right?
Well, they've gone through so many quarterbacks and so many Drew Bledsoe was here for 3 years. They drafted J.P. Lossman because they missed out on Ben Roethlisberger. which proved to be a mistake in so many ways. Trent Edwards, a third-round pick, became the next guy. You know, the highs were really the Ryan Fitzpatrick era, where you just never knew what he was going to do, much like he does today. You know, is he going to throw 4 TDs or 4 interceptions? And that was the beauty of the Fitzpatrick.
The one thing
era.
I know about him, he's going to throw it.
Yeah, exactly. And then, and another Baltimore connection was Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah, I was going to say, we sent you Tyrod. He did okay, right?
He did okay, but he had a ceiling, and his ceiling was, and this is where the Bills, when the new regime arrived, they thought that they could manage Tyrod Taylor for a year or so before going after the players that they wanted in the draft. Tyrod Taylor was, I mean, and this is, in my opinion, having covered Tyrod Taylor for 3 years, if you take 2,000 NFL quarterbacks, Tyrod Taylor is the 1,000th guy on the list. He is Mr. 500 when it comes to passing and running and being able to win. What the Bills wanted was they wanted a strong arm pocket passer, and that's what we're starting to see Josh Allen develop into. They limit his running. After he did a lot on his own as far as running went, they kind of reined that in to make him more of a pocket passer. He still has a running element to him, but this is a passing attack. It's less Lamar Jackson and maybe more Russell Wilson to a certain extent, if you want to make that comparison to this offense.
John, always a pleasure to check in with you. It would be a shame if, for my music audience and with me chasing you two in the Joshua Tree around circa 1987, all these years later, and eating noodles in Tokyo this week, and hopefully some delicious chicken and some beer and some hot pot and whatnot in Korea. I got to get your favorite Replacements album, song, story, just to fill out the musical thing, because you can give me a little Goo Goo Dolls or something like that. If you want to go Western New York, feel free, but this is the music part of the program, John, for you.
Why would I go with Goo Goo Dolls? Well, they were essentially Fashion Pop Light, which is Tommy Stinson's old band. So,
well, I can see you're with the Mats all the way, man. Tommy Stinson tried to make time with my girlfriend back at Hammerjacks in '88. I never forgave him for that. Yeah, he tried to pick up my girlfriend. Yeah, I'm serious, man. I mean,
Did you say it was Bobby or Tommy? Which one?
It was Tommy.
Tommy. Well, I'm going to see him in 2 weeks play a living room.
He won't remember it. He won't remember it. Only I remember. I bet she remembers it wherever she is.
Right.
Hey, man, what's your favorite Replacement album and song? Give it to me.
It passes of Young off Tim. I mean, that's it, hands down. That's my theme song. I mean, I'm on a local radio show where my walk-up music is that song. So yes, Tim, Bastards of Young off the Tim album.
See, I love all the indie bands that weren't REM. Like, I'm a huge Bodine's guy. I see where Kevin Kinney's not going to tour anymore, and Driving and Crying, and some of those other bands that sort of fell into that stuff. The Pixies were playing a show in L.A. last week when I was out there. Plimsolls, those kind of bands. Loved all those bands. I also love the Rembrandts as well. So for you to be a Mats guy, I'm all respect. I got a lot of people in my life that are Mats people, right?
A band that never sold out and always failed when they were on the verge of succeeding. So there's something Buffalo about them.
And still pissing people off 30 years later. I love it.
Indeed.
John Wawrow, that's rock and roll, baby. I mean, that's angst and punk and rebellion and all that stuff that I've stood for. Revolution, just like the offense of the Baltimore Ravens. John Wawrow, AP Sports Writer. You can find him at WNST.net. You can find him at John_Wawrow. That's WAWROW. If you're up on the Buffalo thing, like my pal Tom and Rasig, and I got a whole bunch of Buffalo people in my life. It's a shame I'm not kissing the Niagara Falls mist this weekend. Instead, I'll be on Tokyo Tower eating ramen, hanging out with Bono. So hang out on social media. I'm still getting plenty of Bills conversation, and we're still doing pregame, postgame. Luke's still in Owings Mills. I'm just going to be watching the game, probably drinking beer somewhere in Seoul, South Korea, with hopefully some Ravens fans. If any of you are listening and know anyone in Seoul, South Korea that follows the Ravens, I want to know them. Have them email me. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net International, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.